Okay, welcome to today's class. Today we're looking at the facts of life, and we're looking at 4 different grammar topics in the facts of life. I think grammar is the kind of thing that you need to repeat very often, and it's good to do it in little pieces. So we're going to do preposition and relative clause first. Then we're going to do past modals, and I mean perfect modals. I mean modals in the perfect aspect. Must have done, might have done, should have done, could have done, would have done. And then we'll look at perfect infinitive, which is to have done. So quite similar to a modal verb in the perfect aspect is quite similar to an infinitive in the perfect aspect, to have done. And also perfect participle and perfect gerund, and they both look the same. They are having done. And then lastly we will look at conditionals. Okay, so lots to do today. Now the first topic, preposition and relative clause, you rarely hear preposition and relative clause in spoken English. You very often read preposition and relative clause in written English, okay? And so that's where you see preposition and relative clause, and we see it many times in Somerset Maugham's The Facts of Life. In everyday English, it's more common for people to use relative clause and then the preposition, and not preposition and relative clause. So let me show you what I mean. At the start of the story, we learn about Henry Garnet, I think that's his name, Henry Garnet, and he's playing bridge with his friends. But we learn that he made a grave error, and that's a good collocation, by the way, a serious mistake, a grave error. Very good collocation, and you could also say a grave mistake, meaning a serious mistake, important mistake. I mean, perhaps a mistake which means he lost the game. Yeah, and he made a grave error when he was playing cards, an error of which you would never have thought him capable. Okay, so here is the preposition of, and here is the relative clause, which you would never have thought him capable. Relative clauses start with a which or a who, or maybe a that, but it's usually which or who, okay, or whose or whom, but it's usually which or who or whose or whom that relative clauses start with. So that's how you know what they look like. They are adjectival clauses. They describe the error. Yeah, all of that part describes error. What kind of error? An error of which you would never have thought him capable. But I want to make it really clear right from the start that in spoken English, it's more common to say an error which you would never have thought him capable of. Much more common to put the relative clause first and then the preposition at the end after the adjective which it follows, or the noun or the verb or whatever. But it's much more common to see that which you would never have thought him capable of. Whereas in literature, you very often see preposition and relative clause, and in my opinion, it sounds very intelligent. It sounds very accomplished. Yeah, it sounds like you have a high level of English. And so perhaps it's worth using sometimes in your written work or even in your speech. Okay, so that's what we're looking at. But be aware that in spoken English, it's much more common to put the of at the end. Here's another preposition and relative clause a little bit later. The boy of whom he spoke was his only son. So we're talking about Nick, and the boy of whom Nick spoke was his only son. The boy of whom Henry spoke was his only son, Nick. Okay. Now, again, I want to say that it's more natural to put the preposition at the end in spoken English. It's just more common. Yeah, that's what we usually do. The boy whom he spoke about, or the boy whom he spoke of, was his only son. Now notice that I gave you 2 there. I gave you of and about. Now about is by far more common in modern everyday English. But in old-fashioned English, speak of somebody, know of something, hear of something, these were very common. In modern English, I'd say there's even a difference between hear about and hear of. There is. If you say, have you heard of Mozart? That means, have you ever heard the name Mozart? Do you know that Mozart exists? Whereas, have you heard about Mozart? Sounds like Mozart is still alive and there's some news that you want to tell the person about. So about is news, and of means the existence of something. But in old-fashioned English, speak of, know of, hear of, talk of, They were all very common, and in modern English we would say speak about, know about, hear about. And so the way we would put this in modern English most of the time is the boy he spoke about, yeah, the boy he spoke about, or the boy whom he spoke about was his only son. But you can actually get rid of the relative pronoun whom. You can say the boy he spoke about was his only son. Okay, and so be aware that when there's a different subject here, or when there's a he here, when there's a pronoun here, we can get rid of the relative pronoun. Okay, the boy he spoke about. Okay, but the boy of whom he spoke was his only son. So and of course you can say the boy about whom he spoke. That's also correct. The boy about whom he spoke was his only son. But we usually say the boy whom he spoke about was his only son. Okay, so that's another good one to remember. And please do memorize, we've done prepositions with different words, and I think we've done capable of. Yeah, and so you've got to remember these words that go together, these collocations. Capable always collocates with of. Capable of something. We call of a dependent preposition. It depends on what word this is, and it's always capable of, it's always married to, it's always jealous of. They are dependent prepositions. Okay, so that's what we're looking at, this preposition and relative clause. You can notice a few other things with this sentence though. Notice that this is an apositive, which means it's a noun phrase, an error, and then it's the same noun phrase again, an error. Yeah, and an apositive is where you have a noun phrase and then another noun phrase, and they refer to the same thing. This is a special apositive where the same word is repeated, but it doesn't have to be the same word. It could be another noun phrase that refers to the same object. But yeah, that's an apositive. And notice that would never have thought. That is